oh, dude, what if the ship was and then there was this other thing here, and then they were hitting each other, and oh my god, there was 5 billion little ships around, and which is what Kurtzman does.
Just a box.
Alright everyone, welcome to Wedge Dudge. Wedge Dudge is a Klingon term for 3 ships. 1, 2, 3, Wedge Dudge, 3 ships. This episode includes, you guessed it, 3 ships. And I must say, this episode is breaking new ground for ways to interpret the Lower Decks formula set in stone in TNG Season 7. If you don't remember, Lower Decks is its namesake is because of an episode of TNG called Lower Decks in Season 7. And what we did was we, in that episode, followed multiple characters that were not in the senior crew. And we followed their day-to-day activities. And we saw how they all related to each other. This episode posits an idea that you could actually take that formula and expand it to 3 different ships. So instead of seeing 3 different characters in the quote-unquote lower decks of Starfleet, we see the lower decks of the Klingons, the Vulcans, and the Starfleet. So on a Vulcan ship, which is beautifully realized in the ship, by the way, and a Klingon bird of prey, we have 2 characters that are like an equivalent to Boimler. Okay, Boimler is, in this episode, our main character for the Cerritos. T'Lyn is our main character for the Vulcan ship, and a character named Ma'a, I guess is how you say it, is the main character on the Klingon vessel. What's occurring in this episode is that the Cerritos is on a long-haul warp, quote-unquote, and fascinating, and that we're finally seeing what happens on a ship when they say, listen, it's going to take 12 hours to warp here. And then we just get a cut, right? And then we see what happens after that, and we don't get to see the in-between time, right? We don't get to feel the vastness of space. And, dare I say, the boredom of space. In this episode, we're really feeling it. We're showing it to the audience. We're making it real. Boimler is trying to figure out what he's going to do for his warp time. You know, they're going to have basically free time for the next 12 hours to do what they want. And Tendi, Rutherford, and Mariner are all on their own doing things. Mariner is doing something with her mother. Rutherford is making pottery with Shax, which is very funny. And Tendi is going rock climbing with Dr. Tana. So we're trying to buddy up to our superiors, but at the same time having recreational time. You know, bonding with your superiors, very important. Believe me, I know. Boimler wants to find somebody to basically buddy up with. So he has various scenes with popping in on Rutherford's pot making, his pottery class with Shax, Dr. Tana and Tendi's rock climbing, and what amounts to Mariner and her mother basically having a fight in the holodeck, or what appears to be a tactical training room, you know, where phasers shooting moving targets and all that. Very violent. It looks like they were going to kill each other, and Boimler is boop, 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 quick to get out of that room, slamming on the door. Smart. Before you get shot or stunned. We'll hope stunned. Boimler barges in on Rutherford and Shax making pots, and Shax is channeling his inner rage at most likely Cardassians into a clay figurine or pot, and he's condensing all that murderous rage into a little clay pot. And he's just spinning that pot. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but people will actually take clay and put it on a table, and the table will spin, and then you form the clay pot with your hands. I'm not going to show you that here, because that's frankly beyond the scope of this video, but I'm sure you can look it up and figure it out for your ownsies. And Boimler happens to bring up Bajor, and this sends Shax into a tizzy, because he doesn't want to bring up all the rage and anger that he had as a resistance fighter against the Cardassians, and he loses his friggin' mind, and thank God Rutherford is there to calm him down. Just channel all that rage into the pottery. It's okay. It's channel into the pottery. And Shax is like, okay, I'm going to make a little ashtray, and it's going to be shaped like a puppy. And my favorite, Dr. Tana and Tendi are rock climbing in the holodeck. And Boimler flies up to where they're climbing on hover boots. And he has the Go Climb a Rock shirt that Kirk had in Star Trek V. I don't know if you remember that, but Kirk, he has a background, we'll say, in rock climbing in Star Trek V. And not to get too into it, but he had looked like a promotional shirt from, I think, Yosemite Park. I think, and it says "Go Climb a Rock," and of course later on in that movie, they use hover boots to fly up through a shaft inside the Enterprise, and they go up like a lot of decks, like way more decks than the Enterprise A actually has for a Constitution class refit, and those boots and that shirt make an appearance as kind of like a double reference in this episode, because Boimler is flying around in the rocket boots / hover boots talking to Tendi as they're rock climbing, and of course Boimler messes it up and he falls down and slams his head against a tree multiple times. A violent sight gag on one of our own Starfleet officers, but I'll let it pass because I like the rest of this episode. So you're wondering how the Vulcans and the Klingons fit into this. If you remember earlier on in the season, Riker was mentioning that somebody was funneling weapons to the Packleheads in order to destabilize an area of known space. It appears that they were the Klingons that were arming the Packleheads. On the Klingon bird of prey ship, which we're cutting to while we're looking at the Cerritos to set up a trifecta of scenes and an ABC plot that eventually culminate in one climactic event. We're seeing Ma'a and the Captain Dorg coming to blows about how to best deal with the Packleads. Dorg is essentially arming the Packleads with bombs that are wont to release Metreon particles, which are very bad. We can't have Metreon particles flying around space, very dangerous. He's arming the Packleads, but the young Ma'a believes that it's not honorable to give their fight to someone else. They're allowing the Packleads to do the dirty work for them in that area of space, and that's not honorable, and it's not becoming of Klingon officers, okay, and the Klingon Defense Force to be doing that. It's not very nice to be arming people regardless and causing disruption and destabilizing space. That's not a good idea. But let's just say hypothetically, right, that we're gonna allow that for now, and we'll say that the bad part is the fact that they're arming somebody, okay, instead of fighting on their own, instead of the Klingon Defense Force exerting force of their own accord. So this Klingon Ma'a, you see him over the course of the episode fight his way up to the center seat, essentially. He starts off as somebody who is vying for the position of first officer, and then at the end of it he's the captain, because he gets into a violent fight with the captain, which shocked me, seeing this full frontal violence of Klingons being stabbed and killed on the bridge, which is not impossible for Klingons. So I'm not gonna, have a fit over it. But it was a little bit alarming seeing such blatant purple, pinkish, blooded violence, we'll say, on a Klingon bridge. I don't need an insane amount of violence in Star Trek, but it's not out of the question for Klingons, so we're gonna allow it. He becomes the captain of this this bird of prey, and he has the consent of everyone else on the bridge, and they call him the captain, and they're exchanging weapons with the Packleads, and the Packleads, don't they accidentally use, or intentionally? They're so stupid it's hard to tell the difference. They use one of their bombs to test it, and then the previous Captain Dorg was like, you can't test a bomb, you use it and it's gone, you can't reuse it. And of course they have a cascade, we'll say, of Metreon particles from the bomb testing, which attracts the Vulcan vessel. Hilariously, the Vulcan vessel, T'Lyn, our primary character on the Vulcan vessel, it is Vulcan dialogue to such a comedic extreme that I could not help but rock back and forth laughing in my seat watching it. It's so well written. It's a completely emotionless battle of words about minute details about nothing. It is taking minor infractions upon one's role and duty and blowing it up to such a proportion that you're willing to sentence someone to multiple days of meditation and even transferring them off your ship. Okay, T'Lyn basically, in a wanton dereliction of duty, decides to take the logical choice of redirecting ship sensors to the Metreon blast caused by the Packlet bomb. And every one of her contemporaries on the ship and superiors are saying, why did you do this? Why? You shouldn't be doing anything other than what you're supposed to do. This is insane. She believes it was totally logical to take this course of action. And I kind of agree, because seeing a burst of anomalous energy in space is a little bit shocking. But this is for comedy, and we're taking it to the extreme of the captain not allowing anything outside the realm of exact mission parameters to take place. So the captain argues with T'Lyn, and they eventually decide to divert the course of the ship slightly to intersect the Metreon reading. And wouldn't you know it, the Klingon ship, the Cerritos, the Vulcan ship, and the Packlet ship are all at the same place at the same time. And the Packlet ship first is pelting the Cerritos. The Klingon ship leaves after Dorg is killed, and their new captain decides this is not their fight to have. Very smart decision. And placing itself between the Cerritos and the Packlet ship, the Vulcan ship warps in and is taking the brunt of the beating. Beautiful shot. Just an amazing scene that so perfectly captures the way action used to be portrayed in the Berman years of Star Trek. That's been totally lost since Kurtzman. We didn't have a flurry of gunfire and impossibly dark cinematography that makes it so you can't see anything. We had well-realized, brightly lit ships shooting a few impactful attacks at each other. Beautiful. The Packlet ship, which is referred to as a clump ship in this show, which is that the first time we've seen an official name given to a Packlet ship in Star Trek, a clump ship. Hilariously, on board the clump ship of the Packlets, instead of saying red alert, the alarm is saying red alarm, red alarm. So they warp away, and Vulcan ship and the Cerritos are talking with each other over the main viewer, and basically the Vulcan ship is the captain is very logical to a fault and cuts off the conversation before any small talk can possibly occur because their communication is over. There's nothing left to discuss. Click, we're gone. see ya, bye-bye. But T'Lyn, in the final scene on the Vulcan ship, is punished for her insubordination. That saved the day, by the way. That saved the Cerritos from the Packlet ship. For her insubordination, she is forcibly transferred to Starfleet. And she considers this a punishment, which is sad. Because the real punishment was being a critical thinker with independent thought on the Vulcan ship, which is really at the core of what is philosophically intriguing about this episode. This episode, the theme of this episode, Wedge Dudge, really is the value of independent thinking and critical thinking skills and reasoning when you are surrounded by people who are blinded by we'll say inflexible duty. Our Vulcan T'Lyn is bright, well reasoned, and intuitive. Her actions save the day by, number one, diverting the ship to the Metreon pulse to save the Cerritos, and also a program for improving the ship's shields, which rescue them from the onslaught of the Packlets. She saved the day, but she's punished for it because they were not valuing the skills she was bringing into the fray. The same could be said of the Klingon ship with Ma'a, if that is his name. I'm not sure how to pronounce these Klingon names very well. He is a true Klingon in many ways because he does not believe that it's right to be arming the Packlets to fight the Klingons' battles for them. Right? You see, that's very honorable. Underhandedly weaponizing Packlets against the Federation is not honorable. And Dorg pays the price with his life in the truest fashion of the Klingons. So do you want to think critically and potentially face the wrath of your superior officers, or do you want to fall in line? That's the ultimate question here. And Boimler, for that matter, in trying to find friends and buddy up with a commander, he ends up living a small lie on his own by pretending to be from Hawaii. It works out that Ransom and two other officers are having Hawaiian parties, right, with Hawaiian shirts and all that stuff, like a quote-unquote luau. I don't know what any of this is, but suffice it to say, Ransom and these two other officers are having Hawaiian-themed parties, and Boimler wants to be a part of it, so Boimler pretends to be from Hawaii. He's not, by the way, and then we find out later on that neither is Ransom. In fact, none of them are from Hawaii. They're all just pretending to be from Hawaii so they can be friends with each other, not realizing that you didn't need someone to lie to be your friend. And Boimler didn't need friends in Ransom. He needed the friends he already had in Tendi, Rutherford, and Mariner. At the very end, we realize that, and we also see a young crewman who is not an officer yet approach Boimler in the mess hall, and he says, Ransom told me you're the most organized guy in the ship, and I've been having a hard time with my schedule. Can you help me organize this? And without realizing it, Boimler made the new buddy he wanted to make on the warp long haul, and Ransom told this crew member to seek out Boimler, and then we see Ransom in the background smirking. So Boimler got his friend in this crewman, and I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. It's so perfectly captured everything that was wonderful about Star Trek for so long, and it's been gone for so long from Star Trek. That type of thing. It's been extinct. It's been taken. It has been ripped out of our hearts and stomped on for so long. And they brought it back for this episode. And we saw the fact that there is value in not fighting, and there's value in making friends, and there's an inherent value in looking up to your superiors, and you don't have to lie to be their friend. Okay, that's the main takeaway here, and it's totally gone in Discovery and Picard, and it's just back in this episode effortlessly. You don't even realize it happened until you see the episode. If you would check your preconceptions at the door and watch this episode, even though it's animated, even though it's a comedy, and just experience that for a moment, and briefly realize that it could be back. There's no reason why that kind of tone and attitude can't be back in live action Trek, but it's not. It's only here. Okay? This episode had, from what I could tell, no explicitly adult humor, which was a plus, and no Starfleet on Starfleet officer violence. Maybe if I watch it again I can catch something. But I also didn't hear any F-bombs. Again, maybe I missed it, maybe I didn't, I don't know. But the fact that I didn't notice speaks volumes. Visually, a smorgasbord. I mean, you got beautiful Vulcan ship. You got the Packlet ships. You have the Cerritos in all its glory. You have a Klingon bird of prey. All beautiful. All bright, well lit, and they're in their truest form. You know, it's so important, and it's so gone in live action Trek. It's just disgusting. All kinds of little references, but like I said before, references do not make the show. I think in the battle between the Vulcan ship, the Cerritos, and the Packlet ship, I think I briefly heard an intrusion of the musical motif of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan with the James Horner score. I think I heard it. It's not my favorite, but I think I heard it in there. Go back and watch it for yourself if you want to see it. And obviously go back and re-listen to the Star Trek II Wrath of Khan theme, like the main overture. A running gag in this episode was, like I said before, we're showing the quote-unquote lower decks of the three different ships, the Cerritos, the Klingon vessel, and the Vulcan vessel. We're also elaborating on that with the Packlet ship and a board cube at the end. So the joke keeps going, and it shows the lower decks of our first three ships, and then the lower decks of the Packlet clump ship. And it's three Packlets sitting down, and one of them says, "I think I'm hungry." And then another one says, "You should eat something." I'm getting a little tired of Packlets, but I get now that they're supposed to be the primary background arc to this season. Okay, if I didn't feel that they were a significant part of the primary story arc, I would be upset that we got this much Packlet action. Okay, Pack-Leds are funny a few times, and then they kind of stop being funny. So I didn't find the Pack-Leds extremely funny in this episode. But I get that they're now intrinsic to the plot. Okay? And yeah, it's sad that we have a group of aliens that are just stupid. And that's their whole gig. That is sad, but at the same time, we're too far into it to back out now, and we have to finish the season with the Pack-Leds. Is this the calm before the finale storm? Is the finale going to be action-packed, or is it going to be from the heart? Or is it going to be both? Hopefully it's both. I like seeing ships shoot each other too. Right? Don't get me wrong. It just has to make sense, and it has to feel impactful. It can't feel like a kid banging two toys together. It can't feel like this. Oh, dude, what if the ship was... And then there was this other thing here, and then they were hitting each other, and oh my god, there was 5 billion little ships around, and which is what Kurtzman does, which is basically the ending of Discovery Season 2, and the ending of of Picard Season 1. It's basically what those shows are, just endlessly slamming each other with pellets of light that I can barely see. That being said, this episode, it's got something to saute on the mind. It's got a lot to see visually, and some heartfelt scenes, some good gags, and by God, I think it has soul. Which is why I'm awarding this episode a 7.5. Will the last episode get an 8? Who knows? But you're going to have to do a lot to impress me to get an 8. An 8 from me is huge. Okay? So I'm going 7.5 on this one. Because Mariner wasn't annoying. No F-bombs, I think. No horrible officer-on-officer violence. And a message from the heart that you can take with you into the future. So we're going 7.5. My primary complaint with this episode is that it took about till half the running time to get to the point. It felt like it was meandering a lot. And I'm curious as to whether or not this is technically a setup for the final episode of the season. Episode 10, I'm curious. Because we are moving forward with the Pack-Led being armed by Klingons plot. And I don't think we've seen the last of the Vulcan character and our Klingon character. Okay, are they going to be joining the Cerritos Season 3? Who knows? We got Kay-Shaw in this episode. Incorrect, we got Kay-Shaw in this season, I should say. Are we going to get T'Lyn and Ma'a in Season 3? As part of the Cerritos crew? Who knows? Who knows? Nobody knows. I don't know. You don't know.